Good morning. Thank you for having. Hey, there you are. I was already looking for you. That's my colleague Francis, who will spend more time at this conference than I am. So if you want to bother somebody, that's the guy. All right. Thank you. I was invited to this conference by Darius to explain a little bit about diversification in the industry, using our latest expansion to Denmark as the example. Short introduction. My name is Jaap Erkelens, Jaap for short. I am the CEO of Bedrocan. Bedrocan has been the officially contracted producer for medical cannabis by the Dutch Ministry of Health for the past 23 years. We've been under contract for 25, but we've been producing for 23. Don't ask me how those first 2 years went. It was an interesting period. Over the years, we have grown from being from technically being the first company to ever grow medical cannabis under a bunch of made-up standards, or I should say lack of standards, to the currently one of the few European GMP producers in much the same vein as Bedrocan is. I will actually be touching on a lot of the stuff that you mentioned as well, by the way. Let me just click this so you don't have to look at it the entire time. There we go. All right. I didn't prepare a lot of slides, but I hope that what you will see will be informative. So I'll touch briefly on Denmark, because but Denmark in itself is not that interesting, except as a building block to the sort of wider European infrastructure that was already touched on in the last presentation. So, to continue the introduction, to set the stage for what I want to talk about, Bedrocan currently operates in 3 different jurisdictions: Netherlands, Denmark, and Canada. We used to operate a facility in Czechia as well, but that's 10 years ago. We only did it for a short time, so I didn't include that in the presentation, even though Czechia is becoming much more important as, again, a building block in this entire system. I won't be touching on it because I don't know enough about it anymore. So we operate these 3 facilities. I'll explain a little bit on how this whole mess works. As Moritz already said, there is something called medical cannabis, and it is increasingly turning into the same thing. I'm saying increasingly because it's not there yet. So each jurisdiction, medical cannabis means something else. Sometimes it won't even have the same name. All right. So how do you operate an international company in that environment? Well, operating is a big word. It encompasses many things, and in reality what happens is that you try to piece things together and make a very complex system, try and make it work like communicating barrels, when in reality none of the barrels are the same shape, they're not connected in the same way, and again it becomes this whole system of pumps and valves. And so the frameworks that we operate under. In the Netherlands, there's the government monopoly, OMC, the Office of Medicinal Cannabis, much known and loved here amongst German distributors. I love it as well. I will not say anything bad about the OMC. I'm a patriot at heart, and let's leave it at that. The government monopoly is very simple. It's a government monopoly. The Netherlands has been the best boy according to the international treaties. They kind of had to. We were one of the first countries to do this. So they took the single convention very literally and said, oh, there needs to be an office that actually purchases all the cannabis. So that's what they did. technically speaking, the OMC is also the producer. We are not. We are a CMO to the OMC in the Netherlands. The Bedrocan position there. We are the exclusively authorized producer because they only needed one, so there's a tender every 4 years. Again, my last contract, my 4-year contract that lasted 12 years. Again, don't ask me how or why, or the system has passed beyond its due date. Recent changes with that, so the export limits have been removed and API has been enabled. I'll touch on that a little bit later because these are formal changes. What that means in practice is a very different thing. But technically speaking, the Netherlands is moving into a framework that is increasingly like that of, let's say, Denmark. That's the idea. Then there's also the reality. All right, Denmark. The permanent legislation has been in place since January. We have a completely normal EU GMP facility operational there, in which we are the producer and not the OMC. And the recent changes there have been that the local pilot program has been made permanent, and the 50%, the government subsidizes it with about 50%. Quirky little thing, to actually enter the Danish market, you need a Danish registration. Denmark is not a large market. Currently, it's mostly being served by our product, meaning the OMC product. So as we operate a facility in Denmark, I think we are busy with registering, let's say, the Danish Bedrocan products. But unlike other countries, Denmark has been hesitant to accept our Dutch product as equivalent to the Danish product, seeing as there formally are two different producers. Germany and Italy do not do this, by the way. They have been more amenable to reason. So we are currently supplying our Danish patients with Dutch cannabis. Canada falls kind of outside of the European spectrum, of course, but it is a huge producer for the European market, so I would be amiss to not mention it. We have seen some federal streamlining, so the Canadians keep tweaking the system a little bit. We have a licensed facility operational, just normal under the normal Canadian rules, and export from Canada to Europe and to other places is still growing. Australia is being swamped in Canadian cannabis as we speak. All right, the actual export requirements. So how does this entire rickety thing function? To export, you need a couple of things. It's GMP-like at this point, but not completely GMP. What matters most, for obvious reasons, is compliance. So you need to be treaty compliant. All these countries allow export. Netherlands obviously has its own system where it has to go through the government, but export is again mainly what we do in the Netherlands. And but everything that you see here, so the total timeline for processing, documentation, testing, these are all different in different jurisdictions. There is no one standard at the moment. They are very alike, but they are different in small ways. Quality standards. So EU GMP is at this point the most often, like that is the bar that the material should reach. Does it in reality? No, often not, but we'll get to that. We have internally developed our own, we have some internal standards that we just named GMCCP, Good Medical Cannabis Cultivation Practices. This is partly in an answer to this whole GACP GMP question. So I think currently there are updated guidelines coming out for cannabis that would also see the standards move up a little bit. But a couple of years ago, we were faced in practice with like these problems with audits, like. We were too GMP for GACP, and there's parts of the process that are covered by GACP that you cannot, like in reality, make GMP. I'm talking especially about cultivating plants indoors in rooms. The whole point of GMP is to keep the room clean, to control for particles, but in this case, your product is the thing that's unclean. It's the thing that's creating all the particles. So where do you go from there, Like, what do you do with it from a GMP perspective? So that's why we came up with this whole GMCCP idea, to basically move the standard as close to, for cultivation, like let's say up until drying, to move the standard as close to GMP as you can get, and without maneuvering yourself into this trap that you're claiming GMP while you're actually failing at like the most basic philosophy of it. All right. Yeah. Come on. There we go. Yeah, well, basically it's a rehash of what Moritz was already saying. The whole system in Europe relies 95% on imports. I won't talk about why the situation in Germany is the way it is. I actually don't know that much about it. We've been hiding behind the broad shoulders of the OMC for the last couple of decades. Our own foray into Germany, when they were handing out these licenses, we didn't get one. In the end, I'll be quite honest, that was lucky for us. We probably wouldn't have been able to capture to get our investment out of it again. And for a family company, that's a bigger problem than for, let's say, a new organization. I'm not going to go lose the farm just because I made a bad bet in Germany. But if we look at the supply chain in overall, you're seeing an enormous dependency on Canada and Portugal, and well, now increasingly you see Denmark and Czechia, and if the regulations change anytime soon, probably the Netherlands will start exporting more again as well. But with this enormous rickety supply chain that separates the actual producing countries from the markets where it's actually being consumed, you get things like this. It takes about at least 130 days before any product, like this is the fastest that it can happen, 130 days before it actually reaches a patient. And I think that's pretty lightning fast. That doesn't happen quicker than that. So the technical supply chain, it's very simple: cultivation, processing, distribution, and dispensing. In reality, that what you see is a lot of cross-border traffic, and this nice chain that should be completely EU GMP in reality often isn't. Cultivation, how many cultivators would have GMP? Like all the German ones do. The Danish ones do too. I don't know how many of how many Danish ones are left actually. Us, the farmer, and Little Green Pharma, I think. So if you count it, like I think 8, maybe 9 companies that have EU GMP in Europe. Then we come to processing, extraction, testing, and packaging. That's a little bit easier to get under GMP because like, those are known guidelines. That's already an established system. And even there, you can see sometimes it's a huge mess. Extraction, not so much. That's usually pretty well in hand. Testing, however, can be a giant mess. We're seeing that currently in the Netherlands. Companies like testing companies have they have GLP and they have everything, but in reality they basically fail at basic tasks and you get stuff back that's like complete nonsense. Then they say, oh, we'll retest it for you. Can you pay for a new column? No, I can't. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to pay for your failures. Yeah, but that's the reality of it. So if you do that in a small country, like so here in Germany, you have a little bit of choice. In the Netherlands, you don't. There's not that many license holders. In Denmark, it's even worse. So you end up with things like what we're doing right now, which is cultivating stuff in Denmark, then dragging it back over to the Netherlands, and then shipping it over to Germany. It works, and technically speaking, we have a functioning EU GMP chain. It's just, shoot me. It's it could all be so much better organized. The downstream of it, that's a lot better these days than it used to be in the past. So the actual clinical access, especially in Germany, is a lot better. You can even argue that Germany went overboard with the clinical access, and that's why you're now seeing a backlash by the authorities. But again, that's debatable. If we look at the infrastructure gaps itself, import dependencies. Germany, hugely import dependent. Britain, same story. Italy, they're very import dependent, but that's a good thing, because I'm the one who they depend on for import. So this situation should remain the same. You get like quirky little things, like for example, the Italians more than a decade ago settled on importing Bedrocan. Why? Because some lawyer inside of the Italian health ministry said, oh, this is a completely treaty compliant system, so we're going to take that product. So our product gets brought in. They can't get enough of it because the OMC has a political mandate to basically stop export at a certain cap, because otherwise one of the minor Christian parties that always is part of the coalition does not like the idea of the Netherlands being a cannabis exporter. So they put some sort of artificial limit on it for years. The Italians become completely dependent on Bedrocan product, can't get enough of it, basically give the orders to the Italian military to start cultivating as well. So you get the FM1, FM2, which are basically just analogs of our Bedrocan variety and the Bediol variety. With the Italians at a certain point just calling us and saying, hey, can you help us? We said, yeah, sure, just take the plants in license, it's no problem. You can just pay us a royalty. We were this close, and then again, some lawyer stepped in and they didn't end up doing it. Bizarre. We basically offered them just, we'll go and even help you set it up. Just produce, you can produce 5-6 tons of it, just cover the entire, you can just cover Italy with it, just pay us a royalty. Again, like a family company, I don't need to have all these facilities everywhere. It's a huge pain. Didn't do it. Processing. What we're seeing there now is bottlenecks, lead times, especially for the good ones, the ones who really have their stuff in order. We do our audits as well, so you can definitely see there's a marked quality difference, like how everybody handles their quality system. So if you go to one of the top-notch ones, you have to stand in line. Distribution constraints. They're not so much like that we're seeing real bottlenecks there, but what we do have is there's lots of things that can be improved, and this is simply professionalization that needs to take place. Testing I already touched on. At this point, I would say horrible. All right, let me get to the meat of it. Why did we diversify? Well, I sketched a whole bunch of problems now. What's the answer to this for a single company? Well, the answer to it obviously is develop better standards and wait for European harmonization and just keep pushing that. That's the obvious answer. When is that going to happen? Who knows? What do you do in the meantime? Go on. Yeah, there you go. So what do we see in reality? How do you handle this EU GMP system? Okay, I'm going to give a little bit of an overview. This is pretty biased. This is completely the Bedrocan perspective, and I will admit having taken a little bit of a axe to Portugal here. Any Portuguese here, don't kill me. I don't operate there, but we do business there. Yeah. I'll explain why as well. So, EU GMP cannabis in reality should mean the same thing. Standards are all the same, right? Okay. It doesn't. So in the Netherlands, again, OMC is the central node. OMC does everything. Put a nice little monopoly icon here. The CMO, so how does the system work in the Netherlands? OMC is a central node, and then they have a bunch of CMOs. They have us, they have Vageland for the packaging, they have Steris for the irradiation, They used to have a fourth company as well for the transport, but they've started doing that themselves. All these CMOs have GMP or GMP equivalent. The OMC, however, itself does not. For years, they tried to get GMP. I don't know what happened, but they now have some sort of underhand deal with the inspectorate, which basically allows them to rely on our GMP certificates. And if any difficult questions come from anywhere outside of the Netherlands, they stonewall it. They just stonewall it. It never reaches us. It's bizarre. So we've had all these German state authorities have been complaining about stuff, and basically the Dutch answer to it is stuff it. Take your question and stuff it right up there. That's the Dutch answer. So it's you gotta love it. The state intervenes heavily in operations. Again, the law, the system functions within this very unique Dutch drug law that allows them to meddle in everything. The system is completely dysfunctional at this point, and next year they're supposed to completely rewrite that law to allow a more, let's say, Danish model, German model system to operate. I pray that it will happen. It cannot end soon enough. All right. What we do have there is actual GMP. It's simply hidden under a semi-dysfunctional government bureaucracy. Canada. Canada has the Cannabis Act, and before that, that whole thing went through 4 or 5 iterations as well. What it comes down to is they have this cannabis exception-based framework. It's where in the Netherlands the system is government waves a magic wand and cannabis is now a medicine. So it gets treated like a medicine. In Canada, it does not get treated like a medicine. It is cannabis. It is its own category. It means GMP-like standards. So the standards that you get are reminiscent of GMP, but they're not GMP. So that means if you have to bring something to Europe, it has to be GMP. Okay, and this is where this disparity is what's causing what people are calling, the greenwashing or GMP washing, where you have to bridge that gap somehow. And you either do it by finding some CMO that's willing to stretch and cover you with their quality control system and rub away all the little ugly things and hide those. That's one way. The other way is just using the current German regulations that allow you to bring things in. I think 85% of the material going into the German market is taken in under a system where the local German distributor takes a lot of responsibility for it. And again, it's not GMP. What you're doing is you're putting, where the responsibility should lie with the producer, the responsibility is now spread further across the system, and it's being smudged. Very hard to check in the end. So you get a system that's more commercial than pharmaceutical. That's my point. Difficult to translate over to actual pharma expectations of EU countries. Portugal. Don't operate a facility there. Do know a lot of operators. We supply Somai for our own products. So we do have some dealings with it. What you're seeing there is we had a choice at a certain point. Do we go to Portugal or to Denmark? It ended up being Denmark and not Portugal. Why? Our fear already 10 years ago was that the Portuguese were setting up this export-based system. We always had this fundamental view that a country should allow, Portugal does it now, but it didn't do it in the beginning. I think it does now. But that there should be a medical cannabis system in place in the country itself. Why? Because it forces the regulator to actually deal with the issues in the system. They can't ignore it. If it's just set up for export, it becomes this gimmick thing, and once there's problems, they have no problem shutting it down. So for example, the Dutch government has tried to kill me and my company multiple times. I can be frank about that. We don't really like each other. They can't. Why? Because the law says that they have to provide cannabis to patients in the Netherlands. If that weren't the case, then a conservative government like we were running through coalitions at a certain point, like you wouldn't know what. Like one of those coalitions would have killed the program, but they couldn't because they would have to rewrite the law. And nobody can rewrite laws nowadays in my country because, again, it's dysfunctional. So if you don't have that sort of protection, what you can get in things like, well, what happened in Portugal lately is like all these upheavals. Jokingly put a couple of handcuffs in there because like, if you make the system so wide that people can like subvert it, it just ends up destroying everybody's reputation. The government comes in, clamps down on everybody, and like what I'm hearing is like the predictability for like when you can get your export permits is going down. You're dealing with suddenly hostility from the bureaucrats where before they were permissive, etc., etc., etc. I'm sure it's more nuanced than that, but it's something that we've always been worried about, and that's why we never meddled with it. That's why we went to more expensive, more Nordic, to our fellow Germanics in Denmark, which I have my own regrets about, don't worry. Denmark is a very nice country, by the way, lovely country. If you manage to like go through all the bureaucratic hoops, you will manage. The point is getting there. So Denmark has pretty much been the first time that we've experienced a system that's based on normal GMP logic, in the sense that the government is completely willing to let you do whatever you need to do. I think Germany operates pretty much under the same standards. I think you will probably even, I think the similarity goes beyond that because, like I said, normal EU GMP logic, clear responsibilities, in the sense the inspectorate inspects and you produce as the producer. The GMP is actually being applied as intended. So we got a very tough inspection, passed it. The questions were normal questions. There was not that normal sort of distrust that you see of cannabis companies, where what we see in the Netherlands is where we officially have GMP, but in reality, like the whole idea of a GMP certificate is that you can just show somebody your GMP certificate, right? That's supposed to be okay. Like in the Netherlands, it doesn't function that way. The GMP certificate doesn't mean anything in reality. Like the government just comes in and like tries to do the whole thing over again. Denmark, not the case. So we have a lot of operating, like we cleared all the hoops. So now we suddenly have all this operating freedom that we never had before because we met the bar. Small benefit to it, small country. So Denmark is about the size of a minor German federal state. And it operates like 1-2, meaning that where like I have to deal in the Netherlands, which has 3 times the population of Denmark, with an inspectorate. Like I know the inspector by name, but the inspectorate is like a monolith for me. In Denmark, it's 1 phone call away. If something's wrong, we call Christina. If there's a problem, Christina calls. We live and die with Christina at this point. Our QP is a very charming Iraqi man who, if she visits, he hovers around her like some Mesopotamian, like benevolent giant. So you have a very cozy little system. But it functions according to basically the Scandinavian standards. Happy it's Denmark. If this were Sweden, I would be like, they're even tougher. The Danes are, again, like if you're part of the club in Denmark, if you met the bar, just speak a couple of words of Danish to them, they'll like that. Then a lot of things, no, I'm serious. Like it's just, they become more amenable to you. So to round off this little ramble through the European landscape, diversification. What the hell are we doing? Well, we've tried to basically build the system now. Like what we've done with the facilities is to hedge our bets. Like we're in the Netherlands, but we're not going to sit there and wait for the government to kill us. We need to be in so we made that conscious decision to be in Denmark. Canada is a different story because Canada like has its own domestic market as well. That's what the facility is meant for, but it also functions as a buffer for extra demand from Europe. So to come to a conclusion, 25 seconds, what we're going to see is we're diversifying now because the system is not unified. Once the system starts unifying and you get a harmonized, more streamlined system, you'll end up with companies that can actually just do everything under one roof from one country. You'll see consolidation. Currently, that is not the case. To survive, we diversified. All right, 5 seconds. Oh, I went 5 seconds over. All right, thank you for your attention.